G'day Funny Kid Army. I'm coming to you today from Mudgee, New South Wales. Beautiful town, beautiful warm winter's day, freezing cold mornings. I went running this morning and it was like, less than zero. But just a really beautiful place to be. And I've spent the day today as part of the Mudgee Readers Festival with hundreds of kids, which has been great fun, and then a little bit more tomorrow. While I was here, I wanted to take the opportunity to make a video that I have promised to Class 3G. Class 3G sent me a whole bunch of questions. Actually, they have a whole bunch of questions on the wall of their classroom, and I saw this on their teacher's Instagram account, and so I thought, Class 3G, I'm going to make a video for you answering all of your questions, every question you've ever had in your entire life. Here we go. I'm going to work through your questions, answer them the best that I can. Here we go. First question. How often do you still practice writing and drawing now that you're an adult? That is a great question. Well, it's my job now. So writing and drawing is my job. So I do it all the time. I'm writing and drawing all the time, every day. So that keeps my practice up. I guess the question could also be, do I ever still do it just for fun, just because I enjoy it? And I do, not writing so much, but drawing, yes. And my favorite thing to draw by far is Superman, because I'm slightly obsessed with Superman. And that's what I draw for fun, practicing getting better at Superman and Mickey Mouse. I really like drawing Mickey Mouse. So I'm trying to get better at drawing Superman and Mickey Mouse. Next question. From when you get your first idea for a Funny Kid book, how long does it take for you to write and draw it? I've got lots of ideas for Funny Kid books. They're all in this big document, and I've got little ideas for each character. So I've got ideas for Abby, I've got ideas for Max, I've got ideas for Hugo, Tyson, Pip, Duck. I've got all of these ideas, and I sort of mix them up, and I look for ideas that work together to make new Funny Kid books. Starting that process of putting that together, that's then about 6 months for me to write it. And then I deliver it to my publisher about a year before it comes out in shops. So I've just finished writing now Funny Kid 5, and Funny Kid 5 won't be out until halfway through next year. So I write it over about a 6-month period. The writing bit itself is actually quite quick. It takes quite a long time to sort of formulate the plot and put it together and work out how all the characters are working together and what each character wants and where the conflict and the funny scenes are. Then it's about another 6 months of doing the illustrating and putting all of that together. Mind you, I do all of this while doing lots of other projects, so they're all overlapping all the time. We've published 6 books this year, we'll publish 8 books next year, so everything is overlapping all the time. So it's a little bit hard for me to distill each particular book and how long it takes, but that's generally the process. Next question. How old were you when you knew you wanted to be an author, and did you like writing and drawing at school? Okay, so I know that I wanted to be an author at age 7 because my mum has a school project that I did where I said that I wanted to either be a writer or a pilot. And fewer people have their lives at risk if I'm a writer than if I was a pilot, so we've gone with that one. I've always written and drawn. I've always written stories. I've always drawn for fun. That's just something that I have always liked to do. Next question. We learnt how to draw Max and the duck, but how do we draw Abby? Okay, you've got me. I'm going to put some drawing tutorials up soon for all of the main Funny Kid characters, so stay tuned, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll get that to you as soon as I can. Next question. How old were you when you wrote your first book? Ooh, well, see, I've been writing stories forever. How old was I when we published I was 28. 28 when we published There's a Monster Under My Bed Who Farts, which was the first book I published. But I have been writing since I was 7. Do you enjoy writing picture books or chapter books more? Oh, that's really tricky. I can't choose. I really enjoy writing Funny Kid. Funny Kid is just so much fun to do. But picture books are really fun. They're really fun. They're totally different. They're short. They're really visual. I think most of the work in a picture book is done in the pictures. So I spend a lot of time on the illustrations. So it's just totally different work. But I love it. I love both. Luckily, I get to do both. So I jump in between all the time. So I never really get bored of one because I just switch over and do the other. How do you think of all your good ideas? Well, thank you very much. Just so you know, there are lots of bad ideas as well, but you don't hear about them because either I decide they're bad ideas and don't tell anybody, or I tell Beck, or I tell Tim, or I tell the publisher and they go, that's a bad idea. And so you never hear about it. So thank you for thinking all my ideas are good. Trust me, they're not. I get ideas from all sorts of different places, but mostly I get ideas from the characters themselves. With Funny Kid, I've created all of these different characters, and all the characters want different things. Max thinks he is destined to be great, and his quest all the time is to prove his greatness, which is so far undiscovered as far as he is concerned, no matter what happens to him. And that means that all the time, in every situation, Max is trying to find out how he can be great. And so that gives me lots of ideas. I think about Max a lot. I think about things that he might try, ideas that he might have, things that might inspire him. And that's where the ideas for Funny Kid come from. They come from the characters themselves. The other place that I get ideas from is from thinking about the people that I'm making the books for. So I've talked about this before, but I make books for people. Okay, so I think about who I want to make a book for, and I make that book for them. So that gives me ideas. That gives me somewhere to think. I'm not just brainstorming everywhere for any random thought that comes into my head. I'm thinking about who I'm making the book for, and if I think they will like this particular idea. How long does it take to draw all the pictures in your picture books? Do you use pencil and paper? The different picture books take a different length of time. So in the Books That Drive Kids Crazy series that I do with Beck, the illustrations are really quite simple. And Beck and I do those illustrations together. I don't do them all. In fact, Beck does a lot of them. The challenge is to make each illustration as simple as possible. How can you draw the thing with as few lines as you need to draw? So that takes time, but not too much time. Those illustrations are very simple. The colors are all blocked in. We do the illustrations in pencil on paper, then we photograph them, we bring them into the computer, and then we recreate them digitally. With the Fart Monster books or any of the covers of the Funny Kid books, I use a tablet and a pen, but it's all just plugged into the computer, so it's not going onto paper. I'm still drawing like you would draw with a pencil, but it's going into the laptop. Those illustrations, particularly the books with Tim, the gross and disgusting books, they take a long time. Each of those characters, all of the shading and the coloring and the lighting, that's all done like a paintbrush. And so you've got to think about where the light is coming from, where the shadows are, how you make a surface feel like it's rounded and curved. I call that style that I do for all of the picture books with Tim and the Funny Kid covers painterly Pixar. So my idea is that I want it to kind of feel like a Pixar movie, but I don't want it to look perfect and computer generated. I want you to be able to see some of the brush strokes in there. So I don't use like a gradient tool in Photoshop and just do an automatic gradient of color. I paint it in myself so that it's not perfect. Everything looks more human and therefore more interesting and warmer if it's not quite perfect. Why do you choose to write about gross and funny stuff? That's a great question. I love writing about funny stuff because I love laughing, and I think kids love laughing. Actually, I know kids love laughing. I know humans love laughing. There is no one that doesn't like laughing. So therefore, by creating funny books, I can create books for as many kids as possible who might like to try them and might like them. I don't always do gross stuff, but sometimes I do. And one of the reasons that I like to do gross stuff is because gross stuff is funny. Sometimes we feel like we're not supposed to laugh at it. It's also kind of fun to laugh at it because it makes us giggle, because we don't always talk about that stuff. So that's why I do some of that. Do you have any advice for students who are learning to write more interesting stories? One of the things that I love doing at the moment to help create more interesting stories, and I'm talking about this a lot in schools at the moment, is using the word but. And I don't mean actually using the word but in the story. I mean using the word but as you're thinking about what happens in the story. So something's happened, but then something else happened. But then something else happened. And what you end up doing when you do that is you flip the story all the time, which makes it surprising and interesting. And you never end up exactly where it feels like it's going to go because you flip it and twist it all the time. That makes it interesting for you to write and interesting and unexpected for people to read. And if there's one thing that people love, kids, adults, anybody, about stories, it's that they need to be interesting. Stories need to be interesting. If you know exactly what's going to happen, it's boring. Why did you choose the book to be Funny Kid for President and not Funny Kid for Prime Minister? That's easy, because he's running for class president. He's not running for President of the United States, and he's not running for Prime Minister of Australia or Great Britain. He is running for class president. And last but not least, when will the next Funny Kid book come out? So this depends slightly on where you are in the world, because they come out at different times in different parts of the world. But in Australia and New Zealand, which is where everything comes out first, I publish a Funny Kid book in the middle of the year and at Christmas time. So 2 books every year at the moment. Thank you so much. I hope some of those questions have been helpful and interesting. Feel free to write more questions in the comments, send me more questions, anything that you want to know about or anything that I can help with. Thank you, Class 3G. Thank you for your really thoughtful questions. They were great. See you guys. Bye.